I was reborn as a poor guy, clothes torn and bleeding. A rich beauty driving a Maserati hit me and took me to the antique market to make amends. The owner of Boyajai was selling her a Ming Dynasty cloisonne worth 20 million, surrounded by a crowd of wealthy admirers applauding. I sat in the corner, glanced at it, and said just 8 words. The owner collapsed on the spot because I saw at a glance it was fake. Come on. I snapped my eyes open, drenched in sweat, my mind in a whirl. Looking around in confusion, an urgent and pleasant voice came. Are you okay? I slowly turned my head. A pair of pure white calves came into view. Looking up, beneath a beige floral sundress, a girl like a fairy from a painting appeared before me. Eyes like autumn water, brows like distant mountains, exquisite and ethereal. The girl's face was full of worry. Sir, are you hurt? Istère de hair skirts. In my time, no one dared to dress like that. She noticed my gaze, her jade-like face blushing. She instinctively stepped back and bit her lip, murmuring, Where did I hit you? Let's go to the hospital. I glanced at the white Trident sedan, its front bumper dented, and stood up, saying calmly, It's nothing, but you're still bleeding. I looked around in a daze, my heart churning with shock. I hadn't died, I had come to this era. In the early years of the Republic of China, I, Jin Feng, emerged as a prodigy in artifact appraisal, able to discern authenticity at a glance and determine fate with a word. From Shang bronzes and Zhou ritual vessels, Qin bricks and Han tiles, down to Tang, Song, Yuan, and Ming blue and white antiques, nothing was beyond my knowledge. One day, an ancient site in Yingzhou collapsed, revealing an unknown relic. I found a 3-legged cauldron within, its origin extraordinary enough to rewrite Chinese history, truly a national treasure. When word spread, forces from around the world hunted me relentlessly. After 100 bloody battles, I finally embraced the cauldron and detonated explosives, dying together with all factions, yet this led to my rebirth. 100 years passed in the blink of an eye. The body I now possessed was also named Jin Feng, but far inferior to my former self. After figuring out the situation, my cloudy eyes slowly cleared. In a blink, a century passed. Since I'm reborn, I'll live this life well. From now on, you are me and I am you. The girl pushed through the crowd and caught up with me. Sir, I'd better accompany you to the hospital, since I was the one who bumped into you. Her voice is crisp as a spring, her breath like orchid. Pay for my pants, I said. She clutched her chest. She took a long breath, then smiled sweetly like a blooming rose. Wait for me a few minutes. I'll go get something. It's just in the antique city, okay? The scorching sun blazed overhead. The earth was like a steamer. I followed behind her. Her name was Zheng Zimo, as beautiful as her name, like a painting or poem. This was the Songxian Bridge antique market in the center of Jincheng, the most renowned antique city in the 3 southwestern provinces. Stalls along the way were filled with all sorts of antiques. Bronzes, jades, porcelains from various dynasties, yellowed paintings and calligraphy, old Buddha statues, rusty coins, and weapons. Zheng Zimo took me upstairs to a large shop called Boyajai. It was 200 square meters, with rosewood display shelves filled with porcelains from various dynasties, decorated in an antique style. The boss, Su Wenzhong, rotund and smiling, came up to greet her and led Zheng Zimo inside. Zheng Zimo turned back and smiled at me, saying, Wait for me. I'll be right there. I wandered around the shop with my hands behind my back. Because my clothes didn't fit in, the 2 female shop assistants kept following me, as if afraid I might steal something. After less than 3 minutes, I sat down, still as a statue. Just then, Su Wenzhong came out holding a wooden box. He put on gloves and gently took out an object. Instantly, a dazzling, magnificent aura of nobility rushed toward me. Miss Zheng, the Ming Dynasty cloisonne flower vase you requested. Please take a look. This is a cloisonne vase from the Jingtai period of the Ming Dynasty, also known as copper body filigree enamel. On a copper body, flat copper wires are shaped into patterns and welded on. Then colorful enamel is filled in, fired in a kiln, polished and gilded. This vase is 40 centimeters tall, resplendent and flourishing with flowers, breathtakingly beautiful. Zheng Zimo was stunned. She put on gloves, touched it lovingly, unable to let go. So beautiful. My grandfather will definitely love it. Several wealthy collectors nearby also stepped forward to examine it, praising it endlessly. If not for the rules of the antique trade, they would have offered sky-high prices on the spot and snatched it away. This flower vase was repatriated from France. Its original owner was a declining noble whose ancestor served as a diplomat to Vietnam. This piece was a gift from the Viceroy of Liangwang at the time. It had been kept in the family for over 100 years, with a clear provenance and orderly lineage. There was no doubt it was 100% genuine. Zheng Zimo nodded. "Thank you, Boss Su. I'm very satisfied. Please wrap it up." At that moment, I spoke up coolly and calmly. Since when can a Guangxu-era folk imitation of cloisonne pass itself off as a Jingtai imperial piece? Everyone was taken aback. Su Wenjiang's face darkened. "Who are you? You say this cloisonne is a Guangxu folk imitation? Young man, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't speak carelessly. I, Su Wenjiang, have been in business for 30 years, and my reputation is built on integrity." Several wealthy men chimed in, all saying they trusted Su Wenjiang. I said calmly and unhurriedly, "Hearing you say that, it's not a problem with your character, but with your vision." Su Wenjiang's expression changed instantly. "My Boya's studio offers a tenfold refund for fakes." I looked at him coldly. "Tenfold refund? You can't afford it." Zheng Zimo quickly stood up, a bit embarrassed. "This is my friend," she said softly as she came to my side, asking, "How do you know it's from the Guangxu period when you haven't even touched it?" I looked her straight in the eye. Knowing is knowing. My gaze pierced her heart, making it tremble. She lowered her head and said, "Sorry, I didn't mean to look down on you. Do you have any?" I stood up and walked over. Walking while speaking, cloisonne originated from Emperor Alexander of Rome, was introduced to the Central Plains during Kublai Khan's Western expedition, flourished in the Xuande and Jingtai eras, and reached its peak during the Kangxi, Yongzheng, and Qianlong periods. The craftsmanship is complex. One slight mistake, and all previous efforts are wasted. Su Wenjiang sneered. "I didn't expect someone so young to know so much. Come on then, tell me, how is my cloisonne a folk imitation from the Guangxu period? What evidence do you have?" I grabbed the cloisonne flower vase. Holding it across my chest, I flicked my finger lightly, producing a dull resonance. Su Wenjiang's pupils suddenly contracted. The technique of holding horizontally and flicking, he had only seen it used once before at the decade-long National Antique Convention by a giant in the antique world, a towering figure. I said gravely, "During the Guangxu era, the sea gates opened wide, and cloisonne became all the rage in Europe and America. A folk workshop called Lao Tianli produced cloisonne that won first place at both the Chicago World's Fair and the Panama Pacific International Exposition." Su Wenjiang's heart turned cold. Being able to name Lao Tianli showed this was definitely an expert. But he gritted his teeth and held his ground. "What proof do you have that it's a folk imitation?" I commissioned thermoluminescence and molecular artifact analysis. "Your character may be fine, but your eye is far too poor." With a flick of my wrist, the flower vase spun in my hand and landed softly, a move so masterful it made everyone hold their breath. Ming Dynasty cloisonne, starting from the Xuande era, used extremely rare turquoise green for all glaze fillings. That particular turquoise green vanished after the Qianlong era. I strode over to the antique shelf, took down a Republic-era cloisonne rouge box, and placed both cloisonne pieces back on the long table, leaving me to inspect the raw materials myself. Su Wenjiang hurriedly fetched his tools, scraped a millimeter of pigment from the bottom of the flower vase, and compared it with a Republic-era piece. In an instant, he looked as if struck by lightning. His face pale, he staggered back a few steps, clutching his chest in pain. "The enamel material is identical? Fake? How is this possible? I've been fooled, completely fooled." A wealthy man nearby asked quietly, "Sir, Ming Dynasty cloisonne copper bodies have pinholes. By the Qing Dynasty, craftsmanship improved, and the bodies were nearly flawless. This body's pinholes are almost identical to Ming pieces, so how can it be from the Guangxu period?" Lao Xianli was imitating pieces made in the Jingtai era. To make more money from foreign devils, they only produced one batch, no more than 90 pieces. No sooner had he finished speaking, Su Wenjiang collapsed to the ground, his eyes rolling back, and fainted. 20 million, he had spent 20 million to acquire the goods, and sold them to the Zheng family for 25 million. Now that it's been appraised as a fake, and he had boasted a tenfold refund for fakes. That means he would have to pay $250 million. Even after 30 years in business, his net worth was only around $100 million. Worse still, the Zheng family's background was extraordinary. Selling a fake to the Zheng family. Once exposed, even death would not be enough to atone. After a moment, Su Wenzhong came to. He looked as if he had aged 10 years and said, despondently, "I've been beaten. I'll accept the loss. From now on, this shop belongs to President Zheng. In Jincheng, there will be no more Boya Studio, no more Su." Zheng Zimo gently shook her head. "That was just a momentary outburst from my friend. Uncle Su, don't take it to heart. Luckily, we didn't take that flower vase back, so no real harm done. I'll still have to trouble Uncle Su to help find another good piece." These words made the wealthy people present admire the Zheng family's magnanimity. Su Wenzhong felt as if he had been granted a pardon. Tears streaming down his aged face, he bowed deeply in gratitude. As we walked out the door, Su Wenzhong gathered his courage and asked, "May I ask your name, sir?" Without turning back, I replied, "You're not worthy to ask." Zheng Zimo walked beside me. She opened her mouth several times as if to speak, then finally mustered her courage. "I'm sorry. I really didn't mean to look down on you earlier. I was just a bit curious. You could tell it was a fake without even touching it. You're amazing." Her faint, elegant fragrance stirred my deepest memories. I turned my head and met her gaze directly. Her heart trembled, and she even forgot to breathe. But then my eyes casually swept into the distance, and she felt a slight disappointment. I realized Jin Feng's attention wasn't on her at all. Once upon a time, the proudest princess of the Zheng family in Jincheng was actually ignored by a stranger. She bit her lip and whispered, "I'll go to the hospital with you." I asked, "What kind of antique does your grandfather need?" "The more expensive and historically significant, the better. Preferably used by a famous person, with a clear provenance as a gift." She nodded, secretly shocked, thinking this man knows everything. I casually pointed at a stall about 20 meters away, where there was a tobacco pipe. That was the only decent thing in the entire Songxian Bridge market. Zheng Zimo was stunned. 20 meters away, he could see it. When they arrived at the stall, which was no more than 3 meters long, dozens of handicrafts were scattered about. The stall owner was a middle-aged man with a Central Plains accent. Songxian Bridge was originally the oldest and largest second-hand market in Jincheng, and although business had been sluggish in recent years, that was only true for antiques and collectibles. That didn't stop the crowds of people coming and going here. Jin Feng bent down and picked up an unremarkable tobacco pipe from a street stall, gripping it between his greasy black right index and middle fingers as he smoothed his hand straight from the bowl to the mouthpiece. He turned his hand over and handed the mouthpiece to Zheng Zimo. Zheng Zimo looked at the pipe in her hand. It felt heavy, no more than 30 centimeters long, seemingly made of copper with a dark color. The pipe was covered in copper rust and verdigris, dense black spots, old and mottled. The mouthpiece at the top was a milky white material of unknown origin, with many yellow and black stains. The mouthpiece was no more than 5 centimeters long, but both sides felt very smooth, somewhat like jade. Near the joint with the mouthpiece, 2 English letters were engraved. The pipe was ordinary and very old, and Zheng Zimo hesitated a bit as she held it. Under the scorching sun, an odd couple, a man and a woman, stood before the stall, drawing quite a few stairs. The man was grimy and covered in dirt, looking like either a construction worker or a scavenger. Yet beside him stood a stunningly beautiful fairy-like girl. The stall owner was also curious about this pair, initially glancing at them sidelong with complete indifference. Suddenly, spotting the luxury watch on Zheng Zimo's wrist and the clothes she wore, he shot up from his seat, leaning in eagerly. "Miss, does this beautiful boss lady fancy this item?" Zheng Zimo was not only astonished by Jin Feng's extraordinary ability, but also trusted him deeply. "How much is this smoking pipe?" "That one you can give." The stall owner's small eyes darted around slyly as he broke into a cunning smile. Suddenly, his expression changed, and he immediately gave a thumbs up. "Miss, you're a true connoisseur. This pipe has an incredible history. You know about that old warlord in Sichuan, Yin Changheng, right? Well, this was his favorite personal pipe back in the day. Do you know who Yin Changheng is, pretty lady? He's the founding father of all the warlords in our Basha region. Lu Xiang, Yang's son, Lu Wenhui, those old bandit kings were all his disciples and followers. As the garrulous stall owner rattled off without pause, Zhang Zimo couldn't help covering her mouth. She never imagined that an ordinary-looking tobacco pipe from a humble street stall could have such an illustrious background. That stall owner seemed like a born actor, his lines delivered with perfect fluency. His exaggerated, comical gestures only added to the performance. After glancing left and right, he lowered his voice and spoke gravely. "Miss, do you see these two characters? JB, that means treasure. Hee, Grand Marshalline. His alias was Jiebao. This, right here, is a treasure." The stall owner's smooth talk and deadpan expression left everyone present completely stunned. Yin Changheng was extremely famous in the Beishan and Chushui region. He was a grand governor during the Xinhai Revolution, led troops to suppress rebellions in the West, and in the early Republic of China, he was the top leader of Beishan and Chushui. If this tobacco pipe was actually his, then it would be worth a fortune. "Nonsense!" Jin Feng, standing nearby, snapped coldly. Yin Changheng's original name was Changyi. His courtesy name was Shuachuan. His literary name was Tai Zhao, and his alias was Yuan. Where did the nickname Jiebao come from? The stall owner immediately opened his mouth wide, stared wide-eyed, and was instantly petrified. Anyone who sets up a stall selling handicrafts here is a shrewd businessman. Years of hawking had sharpened their tongues, capable of talking the dead back to life. As long as it's an object, whether a handicraft or an antique, he could fabricate a story about its origin. Just by being even slightly associated with a celebrity, the item would be immensely valuable. The stall owner had good judgment. Seeing Zhang Zimo's attire, he had thought he could rip her off by using Yin Changheng's reputation. Little did he expect that this ragged young worker would expose his trick so easily, instantly killing his plan to take advantage. "How much?" Jin Feng asked the price, and the stall owner quickly hid his sly intentions. No need to say more, this young man was definitely an expert. His small eyes darted around a few times, and with a determined decision, he spread his right hand and named an astronomical price he himself dared not believe. 5,000. Just as the words left his mouth, Jin Feng said nonchalantly, 500. Hearing that, the stall owner's mouth twitched, and he put on an Oscar-worthy performance. With a bitter face, furrowed brows, and a forced laugh, his squinting eyes betrayed a glimmer of light. A businessman fears not you're buying, but you're not asking the price. He fears not you're not asking, but you're not bargaining, especially in the antique business. As long as you bargain, it means you intend to buy. This tobacco pipe was bought 2 days ago from a relocated household in the West District. The whole bundle cost less than 100 yuan. Even if sold to Jin Feng for 500 yuan, that would still be a five-fold profit. Clearly, the stall owner was also an old hand. Although he was willing to sell, he wasn't about to let it go so easily. The stall owner, with a grimace, shook his head like a rattle drum, repeatedly muttering that it was too low. "Brother, you're too harsh. Who bargains like this? Are you serious about buying or not? Although this isn't Yin Changheng's smoking pipe, it still has a mark. See this, JB? This is the mark. This is the brand." Jin Feng remained indifferent. "Are you sure you want 5,000? The stall owner hissed, grinning sheepishly. Jin Feng turned his head and said coldly, "Not buying it. Get it back to him." Zhang Zimo was stunned, her mind struggling to keep up. Just now, Jin Feng had said that this was the only real item on the entire Songxian Bridge. Now, he suddenly didn't want to buy it? Despite her thoughts, Zhang Zimo obediently started to put the pipe down. Towards this man she had known for less than 20 minutes, Zhang Zimo felt an indescribable emotion. AI. Why do this? Why do it this way? The stall owner quickly stepped in to smooth things over. "Let's talk it out. Talk it out. Brother, look, forget the pipe stem, but this mouthpiece feels like jade. At least give a bit more. 500 is too low, way too low. I'm barely making anything. A man's got to eat, right?" Zhang Zimo's delicate hand hovered in midair, unable to withdraw or remain. She turned her head toward Jin Feng. "The mouthpiece is indeed jade, but the color stains are messy and chaotic. The stem is heavily worn, covered in verdigris and rust." Jin Feng said calmly, "The airway is blocked and needs repair. This pipe is worth, at most 500, no more than that." With these cold, curt words, he dismissed the pipe as worthless, and several bystanders nodded in agreement. Zhang Zimo's mind was a bit fuzzy, a faint suspicion dawning on her. Was he trying to haggle? The stall owner's face looked grim, his smile forced, though inwardly he was cursing. This ragged young man wasn't just an expert, he haggled with a ruthless edge. He slashed the price by 9/10 with a single stroke. Pausing for a few seconds, the stall owner still refused to give up, making one last attempt, his tone turning unusually amiable. He gave a thumbs up and said, "Brother, you're a true connoisseur. He monkey, bow to your expertise. Look at this scorching heat, both of us are sweating like anti-Japanese heroes. It ain't easy for either of us, right? We men don't mind the darker, the healthier. But this beautiful boss lady here is different. Just look at her, prettier than any movie star. And yet under this blazing sun, she hasn't even brought an umbrella, standing here, getting roasted. If she gets tanned, that'd be a real sin on our part." Songxian Bridge is one of the top 10 flea markets in the country. Plenty of celebrities come through here every year, and I've seen my share. But a beauty as stunning as this one, truly a face that could make fish sink and birds fall, I've never laid eyes on until today. Zhang Zimo felt a secret joy at these words, finding them quite pleasing to hear. This stall owner, called him Monkey, was very smooth-tongued and immediately prepared to buy the pipe. For words like these, it's worth 5,000. 5,000 pieces was nothing to him. But then Jin Feng said coldly, "The pipe is worth 500. Since you speak so well, I'll add 300. 800. With just a few sentences, Jin Feng changed his tune, showing just how sharp he monkey's tongue was. Even the passers-by thought the stall owner was a shrewd businessman. Zhang Zimo had the words, "I'll buy it," on the tip of her tongue, but Jin Feng's words suppressed them. A hint of displeasure rose in her heart, and her phoenix-like eyes shot a trace of resentment toward Jin Feng. "Am I only worth 300? He monkey, however, was secretly overjoyed. No matter what, flattery never fails. It could have been sold for 500, but look, a few sweet words, and it's 300 more. After his small eyes rolled twice, he monkey's tone turned low and solemn. "Brother, add another 200. 1,000. 1,000, you won't get a bad deal. You won't be cheated. Just add 200 more. Look at your gorgeous boss lady. All in designer brands consider it an extra 200 for my hard work. I've got 2 kids in high school." Jin Feng's face darkened, a cold glint sharpening in his obsidian-like eyes. "No, get lost. I'll buy it." Almost at the same moment, Jin Feng and Zhang Zimo spoke those words together. Jin Feng's gaze paused. Zhang Zimo's heart tightened as she bit her lip and said softly, I am sorry. He's not having an easy time either. It's not much money, so let's just buy it." Her melodious voice flowed like a mountain spring, dripping and echoing, tapping at the bottom of Jin Feng's heart. Seeing Jin Feng silent, Zhang Zimo let out a soft sigh, took a stack of crisp red bills from her bag, and counted out 10. "I'll take it. Thank you." He also let out a long sigh, with fine beads of sweat forming on his forehead. Finally, this deal was done. He made $1,000 in one go, a tenfold profit. "Thank you, beautiful lady. Thank you, boss. Thank you, big brother." He reached out with both hands respectfully to take the money. Just as he was about to take the money, a muffled voice came from the side. "Monkey, he made a sale. What's this thing worth $1,000? The stall owner turned around, beaming with a smile, his eyes shining. The onlookers, fellow collectors, and passers-by all turned their heads. They saw a tall, burly middle-aged man standing there, about 30 years old. The man had a face full of bulging muscles and an extremely fierce look. On his left wrist hung a string of dark yellow 2.0 beads that gleamed in the sun like glass. In his right hand, he was fiddling with a string of dark red 18-bead prayer beads, and on his middle finger was a silver ring with a ruby. He wore an Adidas short-sleeved shirt, but on his feet were a pair of flip-flops, and hanging from his neck was a thick gold chain 0.8 centimeters in diameter. At the end of the gold chain hung a large square plaque of bright green jadeite. From head to toe, he was the epitome of a nouveau riche landowner. Upon seeing this man, the stall owner's face lit up with a smile, and he bent over, calling out, "Oh my boss, you, expert you, long time no see." Boss you grunted arrogantly, his bulging dead fish eyes staring unabashedly at Zhang Zimo. The woman before him was breathtakingly beautiful, a delicate nose, almond-shaped eyes, cherry-like lips, a waist so slender one could encircle it with a single hand, and a flawless figure. Seeing Zheng Zimo, Yu Cheng felt as if his entire life had been wasted. The scorching, unabashed gaze made Zheng Zimo extremely uncomfortable. She glanced at the man, frowned lightly, and moved closer to Jin Feng. I had some free time today, so I came to take a look. Boss Yu reluctantly pulled his gaze away from Zheng Zimo's figure and drawled. Found any good stuff? Bring it over and let your big brother have a look. Bro, money's no object. As he spoke, he deliberately glanced toward Zheng Zimo, wearing a smug expression. The stall owner, Hihozi, flatteringly responded, "These are all old pieces, you've appraised them before. But that pipe in the lady's hand was picked up the day before yesterday in the West City District. Boss Yu is an expert here. Care to take a look?" Oh, Boss Yu followed his gaze, squinted his eyes, and let out a soft, "Looks like a Hatian jade mouthpiece. The coloring is natural, and the patina is aged." As he spoke, Boss Yu stepped forward and said with a lecherous grin, "Pretty lady, could you let me handle it?" Zheng Zimo held the pipe, turned her jade-like head, a trace of indignation on her lovely face. This man has no class. Seeing that Zheng Zimo ignored him, Boss Yu wasn't offended. Instead, he leaned in closer and carefully examined the pipe in her hand. This pipe is rather interesting. The bowl is round, the stem is flat, the mouthpiece is white, and the patina and rust are naturally formed. It's at least from the Republican era." The onlookers were swayed by Boss Yu's words. After all, these days, not just items from the Republican era, but even things from before the reform and opening up could be called antiques. Upon hearing this, the stall owner, he monkey blinked his small, rat-like eyes and muttered, "Is it really a genuine artifact?" Those words exposed his ignorance. Several nearby vendors gathered around, looking at him monkey with disdain. They were all vendors scraping a living at Songxian Bridge, and everyone knew exactly what was on each other's stalls. In this era of nationwide collecting, even the big shops on the first and second floors didn't have a single genuine item, let alone he monkey street stall, so there was no need to even mention it. Unexpectedly, this he monkey actually had a Republican-era item, which caught the other vendors by surprise. This Boss Yu fellow was well known among most of the old vendors at Songxian Bridge. A native-born local, originally named Yu Qingdu. His grandfather's generation was from the Qing Shui Robin Hood sect, a well-off family. They were early demolition rich, benefiting from urban renewal. Later, when Jin City boomed with over 10 million people packed together, they could just lie back and live off their tea houses, shops, and hot pot joints until they died of old age. With no worries about food or clothing, he was into arts and antiques. He kept a group of followers, euphemistically called friends and brothers. Every day, it was either fishing, mahjong, traveling, or parties, living a very carefree life. Yu Qingdu also had a nickname, Expert Yu. Many of the vendors at Immortal Esperage were his fans, which indirectly proved he had real skill. His ancestors ran a pawn shop, and his family had a lot of collected items. Having grown up immersed in that environment, he had a sharp eye. Hearing Yu Qingdu accurately date the tobacco pipe, everyone was a bit amazed. At that moment, Yu Qingdu stared at the two English letters "JB" on the pipe, couldn't help but hiss, frowned, and muttered to himself while stroking his chin. "JB, Jaguar, Stutter, King Power. Sigh, what does this mean?" The mouthpiece and the pipe have nearly the same patina. The verdigris and rust are old. The mouthpiece alone must be at least 100 years old. But what the hell does this JB mean? Could it be the brand of the pipe? Several lackeys around Boss Yu chimed in to flatter him. "JB brand pipe." Yu Qingdu turned around and slapped him, angrily saying, "JB my ass. You're the JB. Have you ever heard of a brand called JB?" The slapped lackey covered his swollen face, wincing with a bitter smile, looking utterly miserable. The surrounding stall owners and passers-by couldn't help but burst into laughter. Yu Qingdu scratched his bald head, squinting his eyes into slits, frowning miserably as if completely stumped. Could it be someone named JB? "Hey, tell me, how much did you sell this pipe for?" The monkey raised a finger and said 1,000. 1,000? Not too expensive. Not outrageous, either. Yu Qingdu lit a cigarette and said slowly, "I'll offer 1,500. Wrap it up for me. I'll take it home and study it carefully." Hearing this, Hihozi beamed with joy and nodded repeatedly. Boss Yu is really generous. Yu Qingdu was not modest either. He waited for someone to bring his wallet and started counting money. He turned to Zeng Zimo and said with a chuckle, "Miss, sorry, my apologies. This pipe is taken by Boss Yu." Zeng Zimo was startled and said in a sweet voice, "Boss He, are you trying to sell this pipe to two buyers?" He froze, stammered ah, and laughed awkwardly. "That's not. It's just that, Boss Yu." "Ah, sorry about that." Zeng Zimo pressed her lips tightly and sniffled lightly. Yu Qingdu grunted, laughed, his face full of fleshy creases. Looking at Zeng Zimo with a lecherous gaze, he clicked his tongue and teased loudly, "What is it? Beautiful lady, you want this pipe too?" Zeng Zimo didn't even glance at Yu Qingdu, but spoke coquettishly to He. "Brother, business is about integrity. I got this pipe first, and I've already paid. What's the meaning of this?" He's face was awkward as he hemmed and hawed. Yu Qingdu, however, smirked suggestively and said, "If you ask me, this old trinket really isn't suitable for a delicate girl like you." The people around all burst into laughter, their eyes toward Zeng Zimo filled with lewdness and desire. Zeng Zimo's fair face flushed crimson, her almond eyes glistening with tears, both ashamed and furious. Her rosy cheeks glowed even more tenderly in the sunlight, as if they could drip with moisture. Her chest heaved unevenly, the soft curves catching everyone's eyes, making countless people swallow their saliva in secret. Yu Qingdu's crude words filled her with humiliation and anger. When had this proud daughter of the heavens ever been subjected to such public teasing and insult? Her lotus root-like hand trembled slightly, appearing even paler. Without a moment's hesitation, she was about to drop the pipe. At that moment, a dark hand grasped Zeng Zimo's jade-like arm and said softly, "If you don't let go, no one can take it." Jin Feng's words reached Zeng Zimo's ears, and for some reason, her heart immediately calmed down. She turned to look at Jin Feng, let out a soft and held the pipe tighter, not caring at all that her arm was in Jin Feng's dark hand. Yu Qingdu let out an "oh," casually scanning Jin Feng, who was dressed like a laborer, and snorted through his nose, full of contempt. "Oh my, the beauty even brings a bodyguard when she goes out. In movies, it's always Taoist priests coming down from the mountain, but you look more like a country bumpkin coming down from the fields." Jin Feng glanced at Yu Qingdu and said coldly, "Remember to brush your teeth after eating crap." Yu Qingdu's smile instantly froze. Staring at Jin Feng, he hissed, "Kid, you looking for trouble?" Jin Feng said coldly, his face solemn, "Well, I've set my eyes on, no one can take away." The pride in his eyes stood as firm as a mountain. Yu Qingdu's face darkened, and he sneered, "What a coincidence. I've also taken a liking to this thing. Today, I'm determined to buy it." Jin Feng said indifferently, "You want to buy it?" Yu Qingdu said coldly, "Try me." Jin Feng said calmly, "Try me." Although Jin Feng was dressed like a laborer, or even worse, the spirit in his face had an air of arrogance that looked down on everything. The way Jin Feng looked at him made Yu Qingdu very uncomfortable, and he hissed, "I've made up my mind to buy this pipe today." As Yu Qingdu spoke, his gang of friends and underlings stepped forward in unison, sneering as they stared at Jin Feng. The people around them slightly changed color and stepped back without thinking. Judging by the posture, it looked like a fight was about to break out. Zeng Zimo felt a bit flustered. She tugged lightly at Jin Feng and whispered, "Forget it. Let's go." Jin Feng, however, remained unmoved. Yu Qingdu, with a perfect timing and position, looked arrogant and scanned Jin Feng with utter contempt. "Messing with a peyote. You're asking for death," he shouted loudly. "It's not that I look down on you, kid. In my eyes, you're nothing but this. Going up against me, the money I've stacked up is taller than you. Monkey, how much are you asking for this pipe?" Monkey's eyes widened. He spread out his hand, all 5 fingers extended. Yu Qingdu shouted, "Great." He cast a cold, contemptuous glance at Jin Feng and said dismissively, 5,000 it is. I won't haggle. The peyote don't skimp on money. I'll take this damn pipe home and study it slowly." Monkey was overjoyed, reaching out with both hands to take the pipe from Zeng Zimo. Zeng Zimo stood close to Jin Feng, her jade-like arm brushing against his, sending a faint tingle through her. "What do we do? I have money. Let's raise the bid on him." Jin Feng turned his head to look at Zeng Zimo. "I told you if you don't let go, no one can take it away." A calm, simple sentence, But Zhang Zimo saw an unprecedented boldness in Jin Feng's eyes. For an instant, Zhang Zimo's heart trembled. Well, nothing to say now, huh? Kid, I told you if you've got no money, don't put on airs. These days, it's all about who's got more cash. You've got nothing to say now, do you? Monkey, bring me that tobacco pipe. Monkey responded with a flurry of agreement, reaching out to snatch the pipe from Zhang Zimo. Faced with Yu Qingdu and Monkey pressing in, Jin Feng stepped forward at that moment. He spoke in a low, deliberate voice, word by word. Do we still follow the rules or not? Monkey's heart suddenly skipped a beat. His whole body stiffened, and his hands froze in midair. He slowly raised his head, the stall owner forcing a smile that looked uglier than a cry. Brother, this scene left everyone present stunned. Yu Qingdu was extremely arrogant, laughing loudly. What rules? You're telling me about rules? I have money, I am the rule. Jin Feng said coldly. There's a rule in the antique trade. Before one buyer puts down the goods, another buyer cannot interfere. Just now, Monkey had already named a price, and my friend had already paid. Even though Monkey didn't take the money, the deal was sealed. These people are all witnesses. Jin Feng said in a stern voice. Both buyer and seller agreed on 1,000 yuan, but the last moment you backed out. Monkey, do you want to break the rules? Monkey sucked in a cold breath, closed his eyes in pain, covered his face, and squatted down. The rules in the antique trade are all unwritten. Simply put, it's first come, first served. Monkey could have backed out and not sold the pipe to Jin Feng, but he couldn't do that. Having done business on Songxian Bridge for over 20 years, he knew the rules of this trade best. As Jin Feng said, he had just named his price, and Zhang Zimo was about to pay. If he backed out now, he could sell it to Yu Qingdu at a high price, but then he'd never be able to show his face in this circle again. Once integrity is lost, a person is ruined. And Yu Qingdu's wild laughter came to an abrupt halt, his smile instantly frozen. At this moment, Jin Feng spoke coldly to Yu Qingdu. Yu Qingdu, you claim to be a man of the Peoge Brotherhood. You know the rules better than anyone. Are you trying to break the rules of this trade? Faced with Jin Feng's rebuke, Yu Qingdu's face changed color, turning green and purple by turns, with none of his earlier arrogance. He puffed out heavy breaths through his nostrils, clearly furious. His dead fish eyes bulged out violently, fixed on Jin Feng as if he wanted to devour him in one bite. Jin Feng stood calmly and said quietly, Are we going to follow the rules or not? Many of the nearby vendors remained completely silent. The rules of the antique trade were entirely different from those in other industries. There were no explicit laws or regulations, only unwritten rules handed down from 100 years ago. Anyone who considered themselves part of the antique trade had to abide by the rules of this circle. Whoever didn't follow them could no longer survive in the business. Although Yu Qingdu was a big spender and a wealthy man, rules were rules. No matter how much money Yu Qingdu had or how powerful he was, he still had to follow the rules. The onlookers whispered among themselves in hushed tones. Although the crowd and tourists weren't familiar with this rule of the antique trade, they had all seen clearly what had just happened. This matter was indeed Monkey's fault. Yu Qingdu, too, was bullying others with his influence. The looks and expressions of the people around didn't escape Monkey and Yu Qingdu's notice, and the two of them were completely deflated. After a full 10 seconds of silence, Yu Qingdu waved his hand heavily, snorted coldly, and forced a flamboyant shout, though unwillingly. As a Brotherhood man, I never drag my feet or waffle. I know the rules better than you. The pipe, it's yours. Jin Feng gently turned his head and nodded at Zhang Zimo. Zhang Zimo immediately handed the 1,000 yuan to Monkey, ready to leave. Monkey covered his face, not daring to make a sound, full of regret, and after taking the money, he couldn't even speak. Yu Qingdu, indignant and unwilling to accept it, glared at Jin Feng and said coldly, A pipe with no known origin or background, and you spent 1,000 on it. A fucking Republican-era brand of pipe, huh? What was I thinking? Arguing with some country bumpkin. Let's go get some tea. Jin Feng slowly turned around and said calmly, Yu Qingdu, you do have a bit of an eye for things. And you even know that the tobacco pipe is from the Republic of China era. Yu Qingdu gave a cold snort, gave himself a thumbs up, and boasted without shame, My grandpa was a Paoge brother. Back in the day, the Yushington Furong city was run by our family. Jin Feng said coldly. The bracelet on your wrist is made of Hainan yellow rosewood with ghost face burls, a glass-like base, and it's very oily and glossy. It couldn't have been polished for less than 2 years. I just heard someone say a bracelet like this is worth tens of thousands. Yu Qingdu laughed, raised his wrist, and replied arrogantly, Kid, you do know your stuff. You're treating scrap leftovers as treasures. Yu Qingdu's face immediately darkened. Jin Feng said unhurriedly, continuing, The 18-bead bracelet in your hand is made of small leaf red sandalwood full of star flecks. The stars are natural and plain, the scales delicate and extraordinary, the brown dots dense, and the luster full. It's also a rare item. Yu Qingdu became even more smug. Pinching the 18-bead bracelet with his white gloves, he pointed at Jin Feng and laughed out loud. Kid, I didn't realize you're also an expert. Let me tell you, this bracelet has been in my family for 3 generations. Jin Feng's eyelids drooped as he said coldly, 3 dynasties. Aren't you afraid your ancestors will crawl out of their graves? Yu Qingdu's expression shifted as he growled. Kid, what did you say? Jin Feng remained calm and composed, speaking evenly. I said you have some eye for things, but you're just a bigger frog in a small pond. Yu Qingdu was stunned for a moment, then flew into a rage. But Jin Feng continued, that small leaf, red, sandalwood, 18-bead mala has a thick, heavy patina. It's deep red and glossy black, with the cow hair grain almost worn smooth. It dates back to at least the Xiantong era. Yu Qingdu let out an ah and looked down at his own 18-bead mala. You say Xiantong, so it's Xiantong? Who do you think you? Jin Feng didn't reply, but went on. And that gold chain you're wearing? It's the 978 standard used in Shanghai, pretty good purity. It's an old piece too. Yu Qingdu's expression softened slightly as he said slowly, That's right. My family runs a pawn shop. I even still have some large gold bars stored away. As he spoke, Yu Qingdu held a large square plaque against his chest, sneering coldly. But the most valuable thing in my family is this. Take a good look, bumpkin. The family heirloom. A Qing dynasty, Tongji era imperial green, jadeite, large square plaque. The onlookers showed a hint of envy. Jadeite has now become popular nationwide, and even worldwide. Low-grade jadeite has flooded the market, with prices dropping repeatedly, but high-grade jadeite is hard to come by. Especially jadeite from the mid to late Qing dynasty and the Republic of China period, these are mostly high-quality goods, family heirlooms, and quite valuable. Yu Qingdu's imperial green large square plaque was 6 to 7 centimeters high and over 5 millimeters thick, truly rare. Carved on the large square plaque was hoping for the sun to become a dragon, vividly lifelike under the sunlight. Jin Feng squinted slightly, saying coldly, The big gold chain is nice, but the large square plaque. What about the large square plaque? Yu Qingdu couldn't help blurting out. Jin Feng curled his lips, revealing a trace of contempt. A Qing dynasty scholar's belt pendant hung around your neck with a thick gold chain. What do you think? Yu Qingdu's mouth hung open, momentarily speechless. In the Republic era, only one type of person dressed like that. Those were the 8 banners descendants who had lost their kingdom but still wanted to play the Lord, carrying bird cages to tea houses every day, wearing everything they owned, living off past glory, waiting to die, ending up worse than a dog. Zheng Zimo couldn't help but laugh, her smile like a spring breeze, beautiful and captivating. In an instant, everyone's eyes lit up. The laughter from the crowd turned Yu Qingdu's face a deep beet red. He glared at Jin Feng, enraged. But Jin Feng stepped forward at that moment, shouting coldly, You oblivious fool. Disaster is upon you. Death is near. And you still dare to wear that red gem, funerary object. Yu Qingdu was startled, looking from Jin Feng to the red gem ring on his middle finger. What's wrong with my ring? Jin Feng sneered. A dead man wore it for 300 years. Then it was dug up and sold to you. You can smell the stench of rotting flesh from 10 meters away, yet you treat it like a treasure. Yu Qingdu's face changed drastically, but he stubbornly pointed at Jin Feng and shouted, So what if a dead man wore it? Funerary objects are antiques too. Jin Feng's icy voice rang out. Worn by the dead, corroded by corpse fluids and rotting flesh, dug up and left exposed in the wild, with resentment soaring to the heavens. And you, every day you kiss it and touch it. You just can't put it down. Little do you know, the dead man's resentment has already transferred to you, slowly corroding your body. By the time the death energy reaches your brow, even an earthly immortal couldn't save you. You reckless fool. The eerie words made everyone present shudder. In the scorching heat of over 30 degrees, chills ran down their spines. He Monkey and the others immediately shivered several times. Yu Qingdu's face suddenly turned pale, a grayish color spreading across it. His right hand trembled incessantly as he quickly pulled off the ruby ring and stuffed it into his bag, wiping his middle finger repeatedly with his white gloves. Jin Feng said coldly, "You mistook the small leaf-red sandalwood 18 beads for ordinary goods, and the iced jade pendant for a cheap square plaque. A worthless, uneducated, rule-breaking scoundrel like you, how dare you dabble in antiques? And you were a funeral object like a ruby ring, as if it were a treasure. If it weren't for your family's good fortune shielding you, you would have died a miserable death on the streets long ago. Trash." Every word was a heart-piercing remark, like daggers ruthlessly stabbing into Yu Qingdu's heart. The faces of everyone present changed color. In their eyes, Jin Feng's slender figure seemed to tower like a mountain. Zheng Zimo covered her mouth, staring at Jin Feng in stunned silence. This enigmatic man had repeatedly shocked and amazed her within just half an hour. Who exactly is he? How does he know everything? She quietly watched Jin Feng's profile. His skin was very dark, probably from being in the sun all day. His clothes were cheap and tattered, the whole outfit not worth 30 yuan. Yet his gaze was so resolute, and the pride in his eyes seemed to look down on everything. His handsome face was chiseled and angular, and his words were sharp and profound. Suddenly, Zheng Zimo's heart skipped a beat, and her fair face flushed. Yu Qingdu was so stunned by Jin Feng's words that he couldn't tell east from west. He saw many people laughing at him, including several vendors in the market. For a long time, these vendors had admired his appraisal skills. Yet now he was being savagely berated by a nameless rural migrant worker. This was even more unbearable than death. For a moment, Yu Qingdu completely lost his mind, furious and embarrassed, his eyes nearly spitting fire. He shouted harshly and fiercely, "Get him! Beat this bastard to a pulp!" The thugs behind Yu Qingdu immediately surged forward. Yu Qingdu pointed at Jin Feng and cursed loudly, "Fuck you." Hearing this, Jin Feng raised an eyebrow. He shifted his left foot and stepped sideways. However, Yu Qingdu didn't finish his curse. Suddenly, someone appeared behind Yu Qingdu and slapped him on the back of the head. "Shut up." Yu Qingdu, already fuming like a volcano about to erupt, was slapped and flew into a rage, cursing angrily. "Which fucking bastard dares to?" Seeing the newcomer, Yu Qingdu gasped. He swallowed his curses, his furious face instantly transforming into a beaming smile. "Dad!" The man who arrived had a pale face, eyes nearly bulging, chest heaving rapidly, heavy breathing, and trembling hands. "Who's your dad? I don't have you as a son-in-law. Bandit, bully, hooligan, robber." Yu Qingdu suddenly panicked, calling out "Dad, Dad, Dad" repeatedly, his face full of pleading and grievance. He grabbed the newcomer's hands with both of his, repeatedly saying sorry. "Dad, Dad, Daddy, I didn't mean it. I really didn't mean it. It's all your fault, you country bumpkin migrant worker. It's him." The newcomer shot Yu Qingdu a hateful glare, gnashing his teeth, and with all his strength, shouted sternly, "Shut up." Yu Qingdu was completely terrified, immediately shutting his mouth and falling silent. He stood there, not knowing where to put his hands or feet. "Country bumpkin migrant worker. How dare you say that? If it weren't for this master, my boy Azhai would have been ruined long ago. Get out of my sight." These words sent a shock through the entire room. Everyone visibly moved. The newcomer quickly walked up to Jin Feng and bowed respectfully to him. "I'm sorry, master. This man is my son-in-law. It's my failure to discipline him properly that led to him offending you, master. Please forgive us." At this scene, everyone present stood frozen in shock. Everyone knew the person who arrived. The vice president of the Jinsheng Collectors Association, the richest boss in Songxian Bridge, a figure ranked among the top in the national antique trade. Master Su Wenjiang. When Su Wenjiang appeared, his deference to Jin Feng left everyone dumbfounded. Someone even a master calls master. How formidable must they be? Countless people looked at Jin Feng as if they were gazing at a mountain peak. Awe-inspiring. Master, I came too late. My son-in-law, relying on his mediocre family wealth, acted foolishly and offended you. The fault is entirely mine. Faced with Su Wenjiang's respect, Jin Feng didn't even reply, his expression cold. At this moment, Su Wenjiang made another shocking move. He bowed deeply to Zheng Zimo. President Zheng, I'm sorry for making you suffer. At this, everyone present was stunned. Zheng Zimo remained calm and said softly, I'm fine. Thank you for your concern. Yu Qingdu, standing nearby, sensed something was wrong and was about to speak cautiously. Su Wenjiang turned around, pointing at Yu Qingdu, and said loudly, I've been right behind you all along. I saw everything that happened here clearly. You little bastard, bullying people with your numbers to force a sale. You've completely disgraced the Yu family name. I feel ashamed for you. You scoundrel. Su Wenjiang's angry reprimand left Yu Qingdu without a hint of resistance. Not only was his father-in-law strict, but more importantly, his wife at home. Though Yu Qingdu was arrogant and domineering outside, at home, he was as meek as a cat. Men from Jincheng were famously henpecked nationwide. Get over here and apologize to the master right now. But Yu Qingdu was unwilling to apologize to Jin Feng, a mere migrant worker. His lips kept twitching, but he just dawdled without moving. You little beast, apologize. If you don't apologize, never set foot in my house again. Su Wendang Zhao An Gili. In Yu Qingdu's memory, he had never seen his father-in-law this furious. Though he was wealthy, he was still quite fearful of his father-in-law. There were many items and things he couldn't be sure about and had to ask his father-in-law for help. Now, disregarding his own dignity, he went up to Jin Feng and, with great reluctance, uttered 3 words in a voice as soft as a mosquito. I'm sorry. Jin Feng kept his eyelids lowered, ignoring him completely. Yu Qingdu's pride flared up, and he let out a cold snort. Su Wenjiang was furious. He slapped Yu Qingdu on the head and shouted sternly, You little beast! This is your savior. If it weren't for the master, you would have lost your life. Yu Qingdu laughed heartily and said nonchalantly, Old man, you're talking nonsense. The ruby ring! Su Wenjiang roared in frustration, his neck turning bright red as he despaired of him. Suddenly, Yu Qingdu gasped sharply, his eyes bulging. Old man, daddy, he said. Su Wenjiang grabbed Yu Qingdu by the ear and growled through gritted teeth. You and Xiuxiu have been married for 4 years. She's been pregnant 6 times and lost every single one. Doesn't that say it all? It's all because of this cursed burial object. Yu Qingdu was jolted, stumbling back 2 steps. He'd been married 4 years without a child. Every time his wife got pregnant, she miscarried the longest that lasted nearly 6 months. To solve this obsession, he'd traveled across the country, consulted countless Chinese and Western medicine experts, and spent a fortune to boot. Exams showed both of them were perfectly healthy, yet once she conceived, the baby would inexplicably vanish. It had tormented the whole family terribly. They'd even tried praying to gods and Buddhas, but never found the root cause. Those so-called Taoist or Buddhist masters and monks had performed rites, but hadn't made a lick of difference. The ruby ring was something he'd picked up from a shop at Shouting Market. His father-in-law, Su Wenjiang, had also seen it and confirmed it was a genuine mid-Qing piece. Ruby rings back, then were precious big stones, top quality. Even wealthy families might not have been able to afford one. He had been wearing it for almost 2 years, often showing it off in his circle to gain face. He never noticed anything wrong with it, but today Jin Feng saw through it with just 1 sentence. The reason he hadn't had children was actually this funeral red gem ring. It was only at this very moment that Yu Qingdu's face truly changed color. Without the slightest hesitation, he stepped forward, hands hanging down along his thighs, and bowed deeply to Jin Feng. Master Handsome, I'm sorry. This scene made everyone present drop their jaws. Once upon a time, Yu Qingdu, a multi-millionaire in the eyes of many vendors at Songxian Bridge, was now acting so humble and submissive. It was my fault, Master Handsome. Whatever you want to do to me, I won't say a word. Jin Feng paid no attention to Yu Qingdu at all. Yu Qingdu, not stupid, quickly turned to Zheng Zimo and bowed, giving himself a slap on the face that wasn't too light or too hard. President Zheng, I also apologize to you. Just now my mouth was too dirty. I'll go back and brush my teeth properly 100 times. Zhang Zimo's jade-like face slightly eased, and she softly hummed in agreement. Jin Feng then raised his eyes and said coolly, "Send a ruby ring to the temple and get a blessed talisman to wear for 3 years." With that, Jin Feng turned around and strode away. Hearing this, Yu Qingdu and Su Wanzhong's expression shifted, and they respectfully acknowledged. At this moment, he monkey called out softly to Jin Feng's back, "Master, could you tell us the origin of that smoking pipe?" This question voiced what everyone present was thinking. Zhang Zimo felt the same. The smoking pipe engraved with the letters GB, the only item on the entire Songxian Bridge that could be considered an antique, albeit a shabby one. What kind of origin and history could it have? This was also the common sentiment among every collector and enthusiast. Jin Feng stopped in his tracks without turning around. "He monkey, the reason I lowered your price is because your character is too flawed, you're completely fixated on money." Monkey, he was so ashamed he wished he could tear up the floor tiles and crawl into a crack. Jin Feng added, "Since I accepted your things, I'll give you a treat for free today." Then he recited a string of English in a clear voice. James Bruce, the BJ Treaty, the BJ Treaty. Everyone was taken aback. Zhang Zimo once again covered her small, cherry-red lips and watched Jin Feng's thin, slender back as he walked away. She stood frozen on the spot. The English that came out of Jin Feng's mouth was strikingly the most authentic London accent, and moreover, an aristocratic tone. "He's a returned overseas student? How could he?" When she came to herself, Zhang Zimo turned her head and looked around, but nowhere could she find a trace of Jin Feng. In an instant, Zhang Zimo panicked. Forgetting about her high heels, she lifted her long skirt and dashed out, like a bride chasing after the man she loves. After a long moment, Zhang Zimo stood blankly at the entrance of Songxian Bridge Market, staring dazedly at the bustling traffic before him. I don't even know his name. Heavens, I don't even know his name." Clutching the tobacco pipe in her hand, Zhang Zimo felt a hollow emptiness in her heart, as if she had lost something. 2 luxury cars approached from afar, stopping beside Zhang Zimo. Several people got out and carefully asked her something. Zhang Zimo shook her head, got into the car, and pulled out her phone from her bag. "Nan, where are you? Can you do me a favor? I want to find someone." The moment Jin Feng left, Songxian Bridge Market erupted like a boiling pot. Countless people frantically searched on Baidu with their phones, some unable to resist reading aloud. Found it. James Bruce. Also called James Bruce. We call him Elgin. Account of the British Empire. In 1842, he became governor of Jamaica. In 1846, governor of the Maple Leaf Country. In 1857, he led troops to capture the 5-colored Ram City. The following spring, he marched north to Jinwei City. In May, he took the Dago forts. In June, he forced the Qing government to sign the Treaty of TJ. In 1859, he returned home. Soon after, he was reappointed as the plenipotentiary of the Sun Never Sets Empire, leading a joint Franco-British force to recapture Jinwei City. In October, he entered the heavenly capital city and burned down the old summer palace. He forced the Qing government to sign the Treaty of BJ, ceding the Jiulong Department of Eastern Guangdong. In 1861, he went south to Hong Kong Island, demarcating Kowloon per the treaty. On January 10th, he held the land ceremony at Government House. On January 19th, he attended the ceremony to receive Kowloon land, then immediately led troops to leave Hong Kong and return home. In 1862, he was transferred as governor of the Three Lands Empire and died in office the following year. That bastard, that old fucker, looted the old summer palace and split Hong Kong Island off. JB, that's the old dog's English abbreviation. That pipe belongs to that old dog. JB count. Huh. Ha. I never expected his smoking pipe to actually be in our country. He's finally getting what he deserves. Ha. Retribution indeed. As these entries were read out from Baidu Bai Qi, the entire audience gasped in shock, and countless people screamed with joy. Elgin's smoking pipe, that's incredibly historically significant. It witnessed the most humiliating period of the late Qing dynasty. Historical museums covet antiques like this the most. Likewise, it's also the criminal evidence and ironclad proof of that invasion back, then any museum would regard it as a treasure. And abroad, such items are symbols of family heritage. Especially in old aristocratic families, these objects are cherished collectibles. Oh heavens, we missed a treasure. Missed the treasure. Oh my God, oh my God. Monkey sat on the ground in pain, pounding his chest furiously, his face full of dejection and regret. Elgin's smoking pipe just slipped right through my fingers. $1,000. I sold Elgin's tobacco pipe for just $1,000. I'm such an idiot. I'm worse than a pig. Su Wenzhong and his son-in-law Yu Qingdu exchanged stunned looks, the shock in their hearts a tidal wave strong enough to flood the entire Songxian Bridge. Gold in troubled times, antiques in times of peace. In the 30 years since the antiques craze swept across China, experts and collectors have scoured every inch of the land time and time again. And now, in a time when fakes are everywhere and genuine pieces have vanished, Jin Feng actually finds such a rare treasure. Here, it's a tale straight out of the Arabian Nights. He looks no older than 20, yet he could tell at a glance that my cloisonne was a fake, and now he's found Elgin's tobacco pipe here. This man, who taught him? In the antiques business. Who could have trained such an extraordinary disciple? His skill in appraising treasures is unmatched, and what's even more amazing, he could spot at a glance the ruby ring in Qingdu's hand. There is no one else in the world with such ability. Old man, is that really Elgin's smoking pipe? Su Wenzhong glared coldly at his son-in-law and said in a deep voice, "If this is fake, I'll chop off my own head." Holding it horizontally, plucking the strings, marvelous skill. Even old Shan can't play it that smoothly. Yu Qingdu suddenly slapped his own head hard and shouted, oh no, old man, I forgot to ask him his name." Su Wenzhong scolded angrily. "Even I don't qualify to ask, and you're nothing. Now get the hell back and do what the master told you. If you still can't get her pregnant, divorce Xiao and go your separate ways." Yu Qingdu's face instantly turned pale, and he nodded frantically, mumbling yes, 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 before running off like the wind. Two big news stories broke at Songxiankyo that morning, quietly circulating in the circle and causing a small tsunami. However, these two stories were soon drowned out by the overwhelming wave of various antique trends. At noon in summer, Jin City was unbearably hot. The heat wave pressed down on the city of reinforced concrete, raging relentlessly. Not a breath of wind stirred on the streets. The weeping willows along the Funan River drooped weakly, gasping silently. In this quasi-first-tier city of 15 million people, humans moved like ants, struggling along in various vehicles, burdened with heavy shackles, barely surviving. Jin Feng trudged silently back, pushing his three-wheeled cart. Just a moment ago, at the gate of Songxian Bridge, this world's Jin Feng had been knocked out of existence by Zheng Zimo, and the self from another world had crossed over. This world's Jin Feng's body, another world's Jin Feng's soul. The consciousness of the two merged, forming a brand new Jin Feng. Reborn, Jin Feng had too many things to do. The most urgent was to find that great tripod. It was the divine artifact that guarded the entire divine land. When Jin Feng examined his own body, he couldn't help but sigh softly. His current physique was far too inadequate, and as for his present circumstances and environment, they only filled him with grief and indignation. He felt his right leg, a long gash the result of being hit by Zheng Zimo's tricycle car. Fresh blood was still oozing from the wound, slowly trickling down his thigh, coating his right leg before quickly drying in the outdoor heat of 40 degrees. To Jin Feng, this kind of pain was nothing new. He'd grown all too accustomed to it. "I told you from now on, you are me, and I am you. Your troubles are mine to bear." The right wheel of the already battered cart had also been bent out of shape. He spent $20 at the parts market on a new wheel and fixed it himself using the tools on the cart. Once again, he trudged back in silence, the sun shifting westward by afternoon. Returning to the fourth ring road, he reached the outskirts, crossed the railway tracks, and went under the overpass. Heading up the muddy, rutted road and across the river, he reached his home. By the river was a large open space, and to the west of it, a swamp of over an acre. A flock of half-grown ducks frolicked in the swamp, quacking and foraging noisily. Piles of assorted garbage, as tall as small hills, lay scattered haphazardly across the open ground. Bags and bags of plastic bottles, beer bottles, waste paper and newspapers, scrap metal, as well as discarded motorcycles, e-bikes, and bicycles. The aftermath of the heavy rain days ago had not yet dissipated. The vacant lot was a mess, with countless mosquitoes and insects flying freely, and countless flies sticking to the garbage, buzzing triumphantly. Next to the mountain of trash stood shabby houses built from various waste materials. Rows of low houses were no more than a meter or so tall. One had to stoop to enter. The roofs were covered with colorful striped tarpaulins weighed down by a few pieces of scrap metal and discarded tires. A mangy rat fell from the roof, scurrying across the muddy ground streaked with sewage and reeking with stench, quickly disappearing into the garbage heap. Xiao Feng is back. Brother Xiao Feng is back. Brother Xiao Feng, did you bring me something to eat? Jin Feng, with half his calf stuck in the mud, chuckled softly. He grabbed a plastic bag from the front of his cart and called out to the little girl at the doorway. Eat dough. The little girl at the doorway was no more than 5 or 6 years old. Her shabby dress was so filthy its original color was lost, her hair matted into dark, stringy strands, and her face blackened with mud. Without a second thought, the girl jumped down from the doorstep, splashing mud everywhere as she happily took the plastic bag from Jin Feng's hands. A cry of delight escaped her lips. She turned around, holding the bag high, and yelled joyfully, "Grandma, Brother Xiao Feng bought me buns, crispy pork buns." On the garbage heap, an old woman with a hunchback turned her head and scolded the little girl. "You curse girl, go wash your hands right now." Xiao Feng, thank you. Jin Feng shook his head quietly. No need. He pushed the cart onward. On both sides of the narrow alley, towering piles of garbage and junk lined one side, while dilapidated, low houses lined the other. At the doorway of a house, an old man with a withered complexion sat dully on a wooden cart. The old man had lost everything below his waist. His gray, cloudy eyes stared blankly at Jin Feng, a picture of bleakness. Jin Feng stopped again, nodded at the old man, and called him Guaizi. Guaizi responded feebly with a grunt, opening his mouth to make 2 sounds of ah. Guaizi, let Schwer take you to Wanda's cinema tonight. The comprehensive team just went last night, so it'll be safe tonight. Guaizi grinned, raised his only arm, showing his right hand with only 3 fingers left, and made a gesture. Jin Feng shook his head and said, "No need, I'll eat at home." At that moment, the door made of striped cloth was pushed open, and a girl appeared before Jin Feng, looking lively and charming. The girl looked to be about 16 or 17, wearing a blue and white school uniform and a ponytail. The moment he saw her, Jin Feng was slightly stunned. She was a girl of breathtaking beauty. A standard oval face, skin so fair it seemed almost sickly, a high, straight nose bridge, and watery, phoenix-like eyes that could steal one's soul. Her slightly curved, crimson lips only added to her charm, evoking a sense of tender affection. At first glance, the girl was 9 parts pure and 1 part alluring, serene, and gentle. At second glance, she was 9 parts seductive and 1 part innocent, captivating to the soul. A girl like this would be hard to find even back in the Republican era. "Thank you, Brother Feng. What happened to your leg?" "Scraped by a car, it's nothing." The girl crouched down, holding a bowl and feeding Guaizi spoonful by spoonful. She turned her head slightly and glanced sideways at Jin Feng. "Brother Feng." Jin Feng turned his head and said calmly, "What is it?" The girl's eyes shimmered as if she wanted to say something but held back, then murmured softly, "It's nothing." As he walked further, many people on the garbage heap greeted Jin Feng with warmth. Jin Feng responded to each one. "Granny Jiao, don't forget the temple fair at Wenshu Monastery tomorrow. Sanhua, the chemical plant near the Installation Technical School, is being demolished. You could go sell barbecue there tonight. Uncle Bai, I heard some fish ponds burst over by Qingjiang. Try your luck there tomorrow. Don't bring the battery pack." Many people in the dump thanked Jin Feng one after another, calling for him to go home and eat. At that moment, a roar like that of a tiger or lion came from outside the dump. "Is Jin Feng here?" Everyone's faces changed instantly upon hearing the voice. Jin Feng turned around and saw a middle-aged woman driving an electric tricycle, roaring over. The middle-aged woman was around 40, plump and fair, dignified and imposing, dressed in clothes completely different from those in the dump. Gold earrings, gold necklace, gold bracelets flashing and dazzling, blinding everyone's eyes. Wherever the middle-aged woman went, men and women, young and old in the dump, all stood up in unison, as if welcoming an empress. People from the broken house quickly came out and stood in neat rows. Even Grandpa Cripple raised his only hand high, offering the most amiable smile to the middle-aged aunt. Everyone called out in unison with sincere warmth. "Good day, Aunt Wong." "Hard at work, Aunt Wong." "Have you eaten, Aunt Wong?" The middle-aged aunt charged over on her electric tricycle with a flurry of energy. She ignored the crowd of old and young lined up to welcome her, her eyes fixed firmly on Jin Feng in the distance, her face brimming with murderous intent and a ferocious aura. Everyone present was scared out of their wits, trembling nervously. Clang! A dull thud. The electric tricycle got stuck in the muddy road. No matter how hard the middle-aged aunt twisted the throttle, the tricycle let out a pitiful whine, but couldn't move an inch further. Jin Feng, just in time. "Tell me, when are you moving?" Jin Feng frowned. This Aunt Wong is the owner of this piece of land. Aunt Wong's husband had a bad class background in the past. After the reform and opening up, the household responsibility system was implemented. Because of this, the farmland they were allocated was naturally the worst. This place is remote and swampy, commonly known as rotten paddy field. Growing crops was definitely out of the question, and cultivating other things had a poor output to input ratio. Over time, this land was left idle and abandoned. Many years ago, Aunt Wong rented this place out to the first tenant. That was Jin Feng. As Jincheng expanded day by day, many industries were pushed out of the third and fourth ring roads. Over time, this place became a gathering spot for many homeless people and those in special professions. In previous years when real estate was booming, this piece of land also caught the eye of big bosses who wanted to buy it for construction. No fewer than 100 groups of bosses came, but after drilling and checking the geology, they all gave up in the end. Jin Feng, let me tell you, this time it's for real. Environmental protection is a matter of a 100-year plan. As the head of the second group of the Tadimio Neighborhood Committee, I must lead by example. You have to move, whether you like it or not. Our place is a major blight on the land temple. She rambled on, and everyone, young and old, was as silent as cicadas in cold weather, listening to the landlady's lecture. The sweltering heat had them all drenched in cold sweat. I know every family has its own difficulties, but you also need to understand my difficulties. Facing the landlady Aunt Wong, Jin Feng frowned and said calmly, "If you want us to move, then refund the rent." Hearing this, Aunt Wong's arrogant nagging came to an abrupt halt. Her eyes widened as she stared straight at Jin Feng. A few seconds later, she pointed at Jin Feng and cursed loudly. "How dare you bring up the rent? You rented this 5 mu of land for 300 yuan a year back then. It's been 8 years, and you're still only paying 300. You little brat." Jin Feng said calmly. "You can't blame me for that. You forced me to sign a 10-year contract back then." Aunt Wong was stunned, choked with anger, and pointed at Jin Feng, scolding him viciously for a long time. "You little brat, you've grown wings? Huh. Daring to talk to your auntie like that. Don't forget who took you in back then. When you first came, you weren't even as tall as a mop, and your auntie even lent you her bike. Now that you've grown up, you think you could be tough with me, huh? The bike? I bought it for 50 bucks. You swindled the last 50 bucks from us brothers." Jin Feng replied with a calm, measured tone, pushing the cart forward into a yard enclosed by iron railings. "I'll say it again. You can tear it down, but refund everyone's rent for this year first." Annie Wong was silent for a long moment. The surrounding tenants were all giving her strange looks. She glared at Jin Feng's back and cursed. "You little brat. Listen here, you little brat. I'm giving you just 10 days. You figure out yourself. Being tough in front of me won't get you anywhere. If you're so capable, go buy this land yourself, build a big shed, and do whatever you want." She looked down at the muddy road, then at her own clean white sandals, and started yelling loudly. "Sunwazi, get over here and push the cart for me." Sunwazi cried out in response, his foot sinking over a foot deep into the mire. With grunts of effort, he pushed the electric tricycle. With the collective effort of many, the local tyrant landlady Aunt Wong's royal carriage was driven out of the workshop, and everyone couldn't help but let out a long sigh of relief. They exchanged bitter smiles, and the next moment saw deep worry in each other's eyes. The sky gradually darkened. Clusters of black clouds gathered in the western sky, forming eerie patterns. Outside the dilapidated yard, an orange light flickered faintly like a bean, lighting up at the twilight hour, casting a bleak scene. The piles of scrap in the yard stacked 5 or 6 meters high, the stench of all sorts of trash spreading in the air, waves of foul odor assaulting the senses. But Jin Feng was long accustomed to this smell, even finding it somewhat familiar. "Feng Yi, is that you?" From under the low bungalow, a voice, slightly out of breath, sounded softly. The small bungalow consisted of 3 tiny, cramped rooms. A weak, skinny little boy covered in dirt stood at the doorway, hesitantly looking at Jin Feng. "Fenggu, I tried calling you but couldn't get through. I got hit by someone." After parking the cart, Jin Feng unloaded the scrap metal, plastic bottles, cardboard boxes, old computer towers, and monitors he had collected. The skinny boy limped over, dragging one leg, and silently sorted the junk, stacking it in the small yard. The skinny boy was named Zhou Miao, a companion Jin Feng had brought out from the mountains of the imperial capital. Back then, Jin Feng's father, Zhou Miao's father, and a few others were inseparable best buddies. One day, these best buddies gathered to perform a ritual, drinking blood wine to become sworn brothers, and even slaughtered an old hen that was over 8 years old. As it turned out, their oath came true. They had sought to be born on the same day, but they ended up dying on the same day. The buddies who ate that old hen all went together to meet the king of hell. 8 of them died at once. 8 coffins. The village elders had taken out all the coffins they had stored, yet they were still too short. With the pillars of their families gone, the wives of several close friends couldn't hold on and remarried, leaving far away, including Jin Feng's mother, who took his baby sister and left without a trace, abandoning the half-grown boy Jin Feng. Taking a boy along made it very hard for a woman to remarry. The remaining half-grown boys had to depend on each other to survive until now. At the age of 12, unable to survive in the mountains, Jin Feng brought 3 people to Jincheng, and their first stop was this place. Zhou Miao was one of them. Life in the mountains was too harsh. In the city, there was always a way to survive. Making all his brothers successful was Jin Feng's greatest hope. As for his little sister, Jin Feng had sworn that he would find her. Zhou Miao silently brought Jin Feng a few steamed buns and a plate of braised pig head and said softly, "Brother Ao left this for you." Jin Feng picked up the half-cold, half-warm steamed bun and took a small bite, not even looking at the braised pig head. "I'm not eating anything from him." He reached out and moved away the fragrant, tempting braised pig head, speaking softly as he watched Zhou Miao rummaging through the trash pile. "When did he get here?" Zhou Miao crushed a pile of cans one by one, responding softly. "This afternoon," Brother Ao said. "What did he say?" Brother Ao said that recently the environmental inspections have been strict, business isn't great, and the daily net profit is only 300 yuan. He asked me how much we make. The bun stuck in Jin Feng's throat. He closed his eyes, raised a heavy 5-gene jug, and gulped down water, forcing the bun down with great effort before speaking in a low voice. "What else did he say?" Zhou Miao, with her back to Jin Feng, stammered. Brother Ao also said, "If we can't make it, we can go to him. There, he has an opening for a dishwasher and a helper." Jin Feng's body stiffened, and he let out a snort. "You've made it long, chewing on a steamed bun while drinking 3 yuan per gene cold tea. His tired and weak body slowly regained a bit of strength. Zhou Miao said softly, "Fenggu, I heard what Aunt Wang said just now. What do you think we should move to? I saw the news. The inspections are very strict. Chun Fatty's collection station in the east side had to pay 100,000 to open its doors." Jin Feng said softly, not moving. Those 2 simple words from Jin Feng carried an indescribable firmness. Zhou Miao's hunched back trembled slightly. "I'll follow your lead." After stepping on the cans and weighing them, Zhou Miao limped over, carrying a pot of scrap, and placed it in front of Jin Feng, panting and coughing continuously. "Fenggu, take a look, are these all copper? Old Yuan brought them this morning to sell, and I bought them at the copper price." Jin Feng looked down. It was a pile of copper coins. These copper coins had been left for too long without protection. Through natural oxidation and exposure to moisture, they firmly stuck together, some like bricks, some like tubes. There's quite a bit of verdigrease and rust on the coins. Some are tightly stuck together, already rusted solid. On a few coins, you can faintly see the regular script characters Qianlong, Xuanji, and Kangxi. The metal is definitely copper. During the Qing dynasty, each provincial bureau had the right to mint coins, and the proportion of copper varied from bureau to bureau. The average copper content of Qing dynasty coins was only 70%. The coins from the Kangxi, Yongzheng, and Qianlong reigns had a bit more copper. Zhou Miao was stunned, his lips moving. So we lost money. After a pause, Zhou Miao added, if we lost, it's on me. Jin Feng casually picked up a lump of coin rolls and said indifferently, we didn't lose. We made a profit. Zhou Miao hesitated, then looked up at Jin Feng. Jin Feng got up, fetched a toolbox, took out a flathead screwdriver, and forcefully inserted it into the coin roll, prying it apart with a heavy twist. The coin roll split into two halves. He split the remaining stacked coins apart, asking, did you ask old Yuan where he got these stacked coins? Zhou Miao shook his head. That old fox is really cunning. But I think he got them from the West City district. There's been shantytown renovation and demolition there, and old Yuan has been picking up bargains these days. He only cheats the elderly men and women. Fengge, are these copper coins valuable? We'll know once we clean them. Jin Feng told Zhou Miao to bring some aged vinegar from home, mixed it with some water, and threw the stacked coins in. After the stacked coins had soaked in the vinegar water for half an hour, Jin Feng tossed a screwdriver to Zhou Miao, and the two quickly pried apart a dozen or so stacked coins. Under the dim light, mosquitoes and moths from the open field flung themselves at the bulb like moths to a flame, clustering densely on it. The scrapyard attracted the most mosquitoes and flies, especially since it was next to a marsh. On summer nights, the drone of the mosquito army's bombing sounded so maddening it made one's skin crawl. The ceaseless sound of slapping filled the air. Zhou Miao, bitten all over, grimaced and scratched himself without stop. Jin Feng got up, climbed the trash mountain, rummaged around for a while, then picked up a piece of firewood, split it with a machete, and lit it. A burst of fragrance wafted from the burning wood. Amid the curling green smoke, the surrounding mosquitoes magically disappeared in no time. Zhou Miao found it a bit odd, looked around, and then glanced at Jin Feng. Fengji, what did you use? Camphor wood. It repels mosquitoes. Zhou Miao let out an "oh" and said softly, you really know a lot. Jin Feng moved swiftly in no time. He broke more than a dozen coin rolls into individual copper coins. Before he knew it, it was already past 10 at night. Jin Feng kept pounding his waist and stretching his muscles, a hint of irritation in his movements. His body was simply too weak, not even 1% of what it used to be. There is still much to be done in the future, but the first thing to do is to get this body in proper shape. The body is the true capital. Wiping the coins dry with his clothes, Jin Feng examined each one of them carefully. During his time at Songxian Bridge, Jin Feng had already committed to memory everything he had seen and heard. Nowadays, coins from the various Qing emperors have become antiques. To Jin Feng, Qing dynasty coins were nothing special in the past, but now it was different. Among these stacked coins, there were Kangxi Tongbao, minted by the Baoquan Bureau, as well as Qianlong Tongbao and Yongzheng Tongbao from various provincial bureaus. Zhou Miao boiled a large pot of water, and Jin Feng threw the coins he needed into it. This was the most practical method for cleaning old coins. Only keep those from Xuanji, Kangxi, Yongzheng, Qianlong, and Jiaqing. The rest aren't worth anything, don't keep them. Don't bring the water to a full boil, it'll damage the quality and lower the price. After instructing Zhou Miao, Jin Feng entered the low, small bungalow, took off his pants, and rinsed himself clean. The gash on his leg was a full 20 centimeters long, causing an excruciating pain. Looking at the messy and shabby room, with the sour and pungent smell in the air, Jin Feng let out a deep sigh. He lit a cigarette and came out. Zhou Miao had already fished out a dozen coins and laid them out in a battered plastic basin. He picked up a few and examined them. Two of them had already revealed their true appearance from beneath the patina, while the others, though still bearing black rust, had their inscriptions fully visible. After soaking the coins in hot water again, Jin Feng grabbed a toothbrush and began cleaning off some of the imperfections on the coins. A Kangxi Tongbao lay flat in Jin Feng's palm. The most common Kangxi Tongbao coins are those minted by the Baoquan Bureau. On the obverse, the character Shi in Kangxi had an extra vertical stroke on the left side, while the reverse bore two Manchu characters, Baoquan. The coin in Jin Feng's hand, however, was from the Baofu Bureau. The character Bao was in Manchu, while Fu was in Chinese, making it quite valuable. With a gentle flick of his thumb, the Kangxi coin shot into the night sky, emitting a crisp ring. He gently opened his hand, and the coin landed squarely. He shifted his palm, and the coin popped out from between his ring finger, slid into his palm through his middle finger, then emerged from between his thumb. Such dexterity left Zhou Miao stunned. But then Jin Feng's hand trembled, and the coin fell to the ground. A grim look crossed Jin Feng's face as he silently picked up the coin. Zhou Miao reached over and handed Jin Feng a coin. "Feng, take a look at this. What is it?" "It's different from a copper coin." The coin before him was unlike a copper coin. Copper coins are round with a square hole in the center, but this one was completely round and felt heavier in the hand. Both sides of the coin were pitch black, making it impossible to see its original appearance. Jin Feng pressed his thumb firmly on one side of the coin and rubbed it hard, letting out a hum. "A silver coin?" Zhou Miao leaned in and whispered, "A silver dollar?" "They're not silver dollars. They're silver coins. Should we boil them?" Jin Feng shook his head and said, "Copper coins can be boiled, but silver coins cannot. Boiling would dissolve the patina, making them worthless. Only coins with an old patina are valuable." This time, Jin Feng found a sleeve from a cashmere coat among the junk and placed a silver coin inside, slowly rubbing and polishing it. As the water in the pot gradually cooled, Zhou Miao fished out the copper coins one by one and, following Jin Feng's instructions, gently wiped them with a toothbrush. There were 3 Xuanji Tongbao, 6 Kangxi Tongbao, 10 Qianlong Tongbao, 10 Yongzheng Tongbao, and 11 Jiaqing Tongbao. At this moment, Jin Feng also stopped rubbing. He slowly opened his hand, revealing a silver coin 15 centimeters in diameter that gleamed silver in the night. Zhou Miao leaned in again, reading the characters on the front of the silver coin aloud. "Xiang Yun Shou Shang." It's Zhangzhou military pay. The Zhangzhou military pay on the silver coin is in traditional Chinese characters, arranged 4 characters from left to right, but not very standardized. Below the characters Zhou and Jin is a pattern. This pattern looks somewhat like the character missing the bottom horizontal stroke, with many messy threads entwining the incomplete Nyo character. Although the threads are many and tangled, overall it has a unique charm. Flipping to the back of the coin, there are 2 characters, Zhu and standard silver fineness. Below Zhu 1 are 2 more characters, Tong Xing circulate. Zhangzhou military pay. Standard silver circulates. Zhou Miao pointed at the silver coin and said, "Bro Feng, is this valuable too?" "It wasn't valuable in the Republic of China. It's valuable now. I haven't seen this kind of silver coin in Songxian Bridge. This kind of silver coin shouldn't appear in Bashu." Jin Feng said these words casually, while Zhou Miao beside him stood frozen for a long time, then silently lowered his head. "You really know a lot." There were still over 100 copper coins left on the ground. Jin Feng swept his eyes over them, but in the end, he gathered them up and threw them into the pot. These copper coins span from the Xuanji to the Xiantong reigns, most of them minted by the Sichuan Bureau. During the Qing dynasty, every province had its own coin minting institution. The Tongbao coins produced by the Sichuan Bureau were mostly of standard design, with varying weights, and existed in large quantities. Their market price was low, and they had little to no collectible value. By the time of the Guangxu reign, Western technology was introduced, and the coins on the market were replaced by machine-struck coins, which were small copper coins without holes. By the time of the last emperor, Xiantong, coin minting was no longer profitable and was replaced by machine-struck copper coins. Only the Baoquan Bureau had minted a small copper coin weighing 1 qian, called the Little Xiantong. Square-holed coins, from the time when the first emperor unified the 6 states, standardized writing and axle widths, minting the Ban Liang coins of Qin to the Xiantong Tongbao, which marked their official end, spanned 2,000 years. They run through the entire history of China, a unique phenomenon worldwide. After putting away the coins, it was already late at night. From a marsh came the chorus of frogs and insects, clearly audible in the silent night. From the house next door, Sam place came another round of howls like a pig being slaughtered. Two kinds of moaning grew louder, accompanied by the banging of a simple bedboard and the prolonged panting of Sam's wife. Brother Feng, can our scrap station keep going? In a narrow little room, Zhou Miao lay quietly on the bed, her dark pupils gently flickering in the darkness. Jin Feng smoked woodenly, asking softly, "It doesn't matter whether it stays open or not. Do you want it to stay open?" In the darkness, Zhou Miao turned her head, looked at Jin Feng, and spoke in a low voice. "I don't know." After a pause, Zhou Miao added, "Brother Ao can cook and make food, and it's delicious. His night stall business is booming. You're smart. You know more than any of us. I didn't even finish elementary school. Since coming out from Dada Mountain, I haven't even been to Chunchi Road more than a few times. Every day, I deal with scrap and trash. If the scrap station closes, I don't know what else I can do." Jin Feng looked up at the ragged ceiling and said quietly, "If you want to keep it running, then keep it running." Zhou Miao said in a low voice, "I'm disabled. I don't have big hopes. I just want to be like Palan Ho, who collected junk and ended up with a whole building. When I earn enough money, I'll go back to our hometown, build a villa for each of us brothers, and find Yaya and Bei Bei. The few of us will be together every day, never separating for life." In the damp room reeking of stench, Jin Feng lay still, his eyes slightly moist. He had no answer to Zhou Miao's words. After who knows how long, Zhou Miao turned around, with his back to Jin Feng, and murmured softly, "Brother Feng, I miss Brother Dan."